فصل, so the next chapter. وَالَّذِي يُوجِبُ الْغُسْلَ سِتَّةُ أَشْيَاءَ. And what causes you to have to do ghusl, meaning the issues when what happens to you, something will happen to you, or you will do something that will cause it to become obligatory upon you to do ghusl, for you to have a shower. All right. Now ghusl, that's what it means. Ghusl is basically having a shower, taking a bath. It's water on the whole body, and it's called ghusl, and it's also a religious purificatory ritual. So it's a religious cleansing. Again, it's not when we say ghusl is a religious term for cleansing. Shower is a physical one, is a practical one, it's just a social one, regularly. But when we talk about when we say the word ghusl, then we mean a religious purificatory washing or shower. So it's something that is religious, and it has certain reasons, and has certain ways for us to do it. So the 6 things that will cause you to need to have ghusl. Number 1, ثلاثة تشترك فيها الرجال والنساء. So 3 of them are common, تشترك are common between men and women. تشترك فيها الرجال والنساء. So both men and women, the same reason will apply for both. And then there are 3 that will be specific for women. But there are 3 of them. So for you as a man, just 3 reasons will cause you to need to have ghusl. For you to need to have ghusl in order for you to be pure for prayer. Does that make sense? So why is it that I need to have ghusl? What am I going to need to do? Or why am I having ghusl? What's the reason for it? What's the point? The point is that if you don't have this ghusl, then you cannot pray. Right? Then you cannot perform salah. So why do you need to have wudu? Right? The same question. So why do you have wudu? So I can pray. So that's when you lose your wudu, you invalidate your wudu, then you cannot pray until you have wudu again. The same thing goes for ghusl. When we say you have to have ghusl, it's because you need to pray. So you cannot do your 5 prayers unless you get rid of this whatever invalidated your purity or your cleanliness, and you need to have ghusl for it. Now, and that doesn't, because what I find to be quite common amongst people is the understanding that if you don't have ghusl, then for somehow you should have ghusl immediately. Like if one of these things happen, you have to have ghusl right now, or else you can't leave the house. No, it's just like wudu. Like you can leave the house without wudu if you know that you're not going to be praying right now, or you've already prayed dhuhr and it's going to be a long time. Also, the same thing for the issues that will invalidate your purity, that will need ghusl. Right? You can leave the house without ghusl. Like it's not as long as you're going to find enough time to have ghusl before the next prayer. That makes sense? So you have to find a time or a place where you can have ghusl before the next prayer so that you can actually pray. But it's not something that causes you not to be able to function as a Muslim if you haven't had ghusl. So I find that to be, sometimes people treat it, you can sleep without having ghusl, for example. It's okay to fall asleep without having ghusl. You don't have to have ghusl before you go to sleep. You can sleep and wake up later and do it at a different time. So it's just like losing your wudu. Needing to have ghusl is like needing to have wudu, no difference.
But again, that's the minimum. There's also things that are liked to do.
Of course, there's recommended.
So recommended things.
Oh, of course, definitely. We'll come through the recommendations inshallah in a second. I just wanted that concept to be clear, that you don't, if you don't have ghusl, or if you need ghusl, you don't have to do it immediately. It's not something obligatory in the deen. It's that your necessity or your need for ghusl is like your need for wudu is based on salah. Alright, so the first one, وَهِيَ الْتِقَاءُ الْخِتَانَيْنِ, which means figuratively in Arabic, intercourse, just to make it as simple as possible, without going into detail of what the linguistics actually mean. But التقاء الختانين is actual intercourse between a man and woman. Whether they actually came through with it or not doesn't really matter. As long as there's even the beginning of intercourse between a man and a woman, just the start, then khalas, now you have to have ghusl. Both of them have to have ghusl. It has nothing to do with actually achieving closure on the issue itself. So whether you finished what you were doing or she didn't or she did, doesn't make a difference. As long as when intercourse begins, khalas, now when you're done, whatever happens, you're going to have ghusl after that. So that's the number one way. التقاء الختانين, and there are many ahadith that support that, and there's no khilaf amongst scholars regardless of the madhahib regarding that issue. All right, number 2, inzal al-maniki, which is basically euphoria or achieving an orgasm, basically. For men and women, same old. So don't ask me how it happens to women, because that's none of your business, and it's none of mine either. But for you as a young man, it's understood what that means. So it's the actual ejaculation of a certain substance that comes out of the body, and with it comes a certain feel of euphoria, and it has a certain substance to it as well. Because now I know this may not be the funnest thing to talk about, or the most I guess enjoyable part of studying fiqh, but there are 3 different types of liquids or liquid-like substances that will leave a man's body. The first one, which is studied, which is brought up in the text, inzal al-mani, so the ejaculation of mani, which is sperm. And then there's al-madhi, and then there's al-madi. So these are three things that come out of the man's body. I just want to make sure that you have some clarity on them. So this one over here is basically what happens when you achieve an orgasm, right? It's the actual ejaculation of sperm. So, the madhi is the liquid that comes before. This comes with arousal. Just general arousal. If a man is aroused for any reason, then a small amount of see-through, transparent liquid substance will leave his body with no euphoria, with no ejaculation. It'll just normally come out, right? And then al-wadi is a thick liquid that accompanies urination sometimes. Usually it's a remnant of something, or it's an evidence of maybe even an issue you need to see a doctor for. So, but this accompanies urination. These two are specific to arousal. So the madi, when a man is aroused sexually in any form, then a certain amount of transparent liquid will come out in small amounts at different times. It will not be ejaculated, there'll be nothing attached to it. The mani is the actual achievement of euphoria or the orgasm, and it has a spin. And there's certain characteristics of mani. It smells like dough, and it has a very thick substance. It's very thick. So we know what this is. Now you just need important that you understand these two, because these two are najasa, meaning you have to remove them from the clothing, and you have to make wudu for them. All right. So if you find either of these two, right, then you don't have to have a ghusl. You just need to remove them. They're najis, they are impure. So if they're on the boxers, then you need to change those, or you have to wash them with water before you can actually pray. And then you have to make wudu. Meaning these two things will cause for you to lose wudu. Well, how do I know that? Go back to what causes you to lose wudu. If we just study a second, one of them, if you look, ma kharaja min as-sabilayn, anything that leaves the two exits of the human being. So these two leave the exits. So once they leave, if something comes out, you've lost your wudu. So these cause you to lose your wudu, and they're najis. On the other hand, this is not. We'll talk about that in a second, inshallah. This is not najis in itself, but it will cause you to have ghusl. So that's the mani, which is basically leaves the man at the end of his fun hour. All right. So that's the second one. So the first one is iltiqa'ul khitanayn, which is basically intercourse. Even the beginning of it will cause you to need to have ghusl. Ejaculation of sperm for the man will also cause you to need wudu. For a woman, it's the same thing. Achievement of orgasm for her will also cause her to need ghusl. There may be liquid or fluid attached to that, and there may not be, but that's something specific to ladies. But for us, any achievement of euphoria, then you're going to need to have ghusl. And the third thing is al-maut, is death. So inshallah, you don't ever have to have number 3, but inshallah, you have a lot of number 1 and 2 before you have number 3, inshallah. And your life bil halal, when someone dies, then they need to have ghusl. That's why we have a ghusl for the mayyit. If you ever done it before for someone who passed away, you should do it. Especially if you're young, you should participate in it once, at least once. Someone who, preferably not someone who's very, very closely related to you, because it may be very difficult for you to handle. But it's it teaches you a lot. It teaches you a lot of humbleness. It gives you a lot of clarity on issues when you actually participate in ghusl of someone who's deceased, who passed away. Respecting their body, respecting their privacy, and also understanding death and understanding what it looks like, what it feels like, everything about it. It's a very, very educating experience. Now I hope that inshallah not too many people die, so you don't have to be a part of it. But if there is, I think it's educational for young people to participate in that. I remember I've been a part of it a number of times in my life, and it brings you back to focus. It's like your lens is out of focus, and then suddenly you see things for what they are. Life is very, very simple. So 3 reasons will cause the human body to need ghusl in order for it to be pure again. Pure religiously speaking, not physically speaking. Physically, we're all pure by the nature of being created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But religiously pure, religious purity will need ghusl to bring it back if it's gone in 3 occasions. If intercourse happens between a man and a woman, even the beginning of it without closure, ejaculation of sperm or euphoria, orgasms for men or for women, and death for men or women, then this will cause you to need to have ghusl. Alright, and then وثلاثة, so that's clear, right? That's not too hard. وثلاثة تختص بها النساء, and then 3 reasons are specific for women only. وهي الحيض والنفاس والولادة. And the 3 reasons are specific to women. The first one is hayd, during her menstrual period. So hayd is the menstrual period. When a lady enters her menstrual period, then when she's done, before she can pray the next prayer, she's going to have ghusl. So she has to have ghusl. After that, nifas. And nifas are the first month and a half or 40 days after postpartum, after someone gives birth. So after a lady gives birth, for those 40 days, there will be certain substances that will be leaving her body for 40 days. During that time, she does not have to do salah or siyam. And when she's done that period, just like the menstrual period, she has to have ghusl before she can pray after that. And then the third one is wilada, is after giving birth. So after she gives birth, she should have ghusl. And then after the nifas time is over, which is the 40 days after she gives birth, she should also have ghusl. And after menstrual period, before she can pray again, she has to have ghusl. So those are the 3 reasons. And what's the in common point of all 3 is that different substances of blood mixed with blood will be leaving her body during the time. So during the menstrual period, it's a large loss of blood. And then during nifas and during birth, it's also a lot of blood mixed fluids that will be leaving her body. So she has ghusl at the end of it when that period's over, before she prays again. Is that clear?
Does she have to make up all her prayers?
No. We'll come to that inshallah later though. But we'll come to, because there's a difference of opinion, but we'll come to that inshallah as we go along. Alright. So these are pretty simple, they're pretty straightforward. There are 6 reasons that will cause the human body to need religious impurity through ghusl, to retrieve the religious body purity through ghusl. 3 of them are common between men and women, intercourse, ejaculation, and death, and then 3 specific for women. And menstrual period, giving birth, and then the 40 days after birth as well. This is called nifas. All right, that sums that up. Okay, the second chapter after that, فصل وفرائض الغسل ثلاثة أشياء. There are 3 obligatory actions during ghusl. So if we talked about wudu, what are the obligatory actions for wudu? Give me an obligatory action for wudu. Yeah? Intention, and then after that, face, arms, wiping the head and feet. Washing the feet and then doing it in that doing it in sequence for Imam Shafiee specifically. So those are the 6 fara'id for wudu. 5 are everyone agrees to, and the 6th one is something that they differ upon. And of course there's other ones in different that they add to it. But those are the fara'id, those are the obligatory actions of wudu that we always have to do for every wudu. Now for ghusl, we only have 3 things that we need to do for ghusl. It's only 3 things that are obligatory during ghusl. Number 1, an-niyyah. Again, the intention. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're not doing it. Right? That's how we understand niyyah. If you don't know what you're doing, then you're not really doing it. If you're just playing around in the water, but you're not actually doing ghusl, then you're not doing ghusl. If I ask you, were you doing ghusl? Like, no, I was just playing in the water. Then, okay, you didn't do ghusl because you weren't doing ghusl. Just because it happened to happen, like the same stuff doesn't mean anything. So you need to have the intention of actually doing what you wanted to do. So a niyyah is going to, you can find the niyyah, the intention is the fard for a lot of things. You find it as an obligatory action for many religious actions in Islam. All right. Number 2, وَإِزَالَةُ النَّجَاسَةِ إِنْ كَانَتْ عَلَى بَدَنِهِ, and is removal of filth or impurities from the body if it's on the body. So you need to remove impurities. So if there's urine or feces, or and not for the Imam Shafi'i, but for others sperm, but not for Imam Shafi'i, but for others. But regardless, any substance that is seen to be impure, then you need to wash it off the body. It has to be taken off. And sometimes, if the reason for it is intercourse, then some of the fluids that have left the woman won't be seen as impurities, so you have to take that off anyway. So you need to remove any impurities that are stuck on the body, regardless of where they came from. So that's the second obligatory action of ghusl. Number 3, إيصال الماء وإيصال الماء إلى جميع الشعر والبشرة. So water has to touch and come on the whole body, all the skin and all the hair. Right? So it's pretty easy to achieve that today, because all you do is just stand under the thing that puts the water down. Now back in the day, when you had to have a bin and a small container, and then you have to put in the container and you have to do it and then do it again, and then it's empty and you have to find some way to get some more water because you didn't get on this part of the body. So it was a bit more challenging then than it is today. So it was very important that they talked about that. Now I don't see that we need to spend too much time explaining this now, because all you have to do is just stand under the shower and make sure that you observe all of your body. Make sure that everything, that water is touching every part. I'm going to give you a few ideas. Make sure that water behind the ears, under the chin and the neck, armpits, the groin, even the back part of your back and the back part of your body, and then your feet, and then maybe the external or outward parts of your legs. These parts sometimes don't get in the shower. The way the showers are made, sometimes these parts don't get any water on, because you're standing and you're focusing on your upper body part, and you may not pay attention on your outer parts of it. So just these parts of your legs, make sure. Also maybe take a moment, and we'll talk about that in the sunnah and the recommendations in a second. There's more, but just make sure, because you want to make sure that the fard is done. As long as you've done these 3 things, as long as you made your niyyah that I'm going to have ghusl, and you make sure that you removed any najasa, any filth or impurities from your body, and water has touched all of your body, then your ghusl is well. Good. You can move on. You don't need to do anything else. That makes sense? So if you've done that, then your ghusl is acceptable. Now within the spirit of that, what this means is, if you don't have any najasa on your body at all, right? No najasa whatsoever, and you were standing in front of a swimming pool, you made niyyah, and you dove in, came out on the other side, you have ghusl. Oh, so you've done ghusl. But Imam Shafiee, you've done. Now this counts, and you can pray Dhuhr or Asr, where you want to pray after it. Right? Now there are recommendations for ghusl that are a bit more detailed, but that in its own sense is ghusl. You've done it because you brought all 3 obligatory actions. You made your niyyah, you made the intention. There was no najasa still on your body. If there's still najasa, of course that doesn't count. There has to be no filth or impurities on your body at the time, and usually that's feces and urine. If that's not there, then you're good. And make sure that water touches all of your body. If you go into a pool, then water has touched all of your body, almost 100%. Like there's almost no exception to the rule, because you're inside the body of water. So now water is touching everything. There's nothing holding it back, unless you have a wig on or something keeping water out of your hair. Besides, that makes sense. So that's the obligatory actions of ghusl. Now, وَسُنَنُهُ خَمْسَةُ أَشْيَاء, and there are 5 issues that are recommendations for ghusl, meaning these are things that the Prophet ﷺ in different hadith did, and when he did them, they were considered by the scholars to be sunnah rather than fard. Now I take one quick second to talk about that for a moment, just so you have some understanding. Why is it that some things will be considered sunnah rather than fard? So there's a number of issues that are studied by the scholars when they look at certain things the Prophet ﷺ did and said, well, is this fard or is this sunnah? So what they look at is the wording of what's being talked about. Meaning, did the Prophet ﷺ did he give a clear command for it or not? Number 2, do we have other evidence suggesting that he didn't do the thing that he commanded ﷺ in other situations? Number 3, is it something that was narrated by more than one person who lived by him ﷺ, or is it just one narration? Number 4, is the hadith that we're using authentic? Right? Number 5, is there a Quranic ayah that talks about this issue and outlines the obligatory actions, so everything else is going to be complementary or is going to be recommended? So all these things come into play when they're looking at a hadith saying, is that going to turn into, is that obligatory or is that recommended? And that's how they come up with these answers, and different, because there's a abundance of evidence in Islam, and there's difference of opinion on the authenticity authenticity of this evidence, and there's difference of opinion on understanding the evidence, meaning the wording sometimes, the linguistics will differ, so there's different opinions. And that's how fiqh is very broad in its approach. You'll find different opinions, which gives a lot of yusr, so it gives a lot of ease for the ummah, so it makes life easier for people. You have more than one way to do things. Alright, so the sunanuhu khamsatu ashya, there are five recommended actions, and number one, at-tasmiyah, saying Bismillah, and that's just like wudu, and that will be like almost every other religious action that we do. Every other action in life, if you are doing it to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then say Bismillah at the beginning of it, or even think it, because the meaning of it is I'm doing it in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you're going to do something in the name of Allah, you will make sure that you're doing it to please Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything starts with Bismillah, everything at all, with almost no exception. After that, wal wudu'u qablahu. So another sunnah that Imam Shafiee added is that doing wudu before it. So before you start your ghusl, you make wudu, and then you do your ghusl, because there is a hadith for Aisha radiallahu anha of her describing the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ghusl and seeing him make wudu before he started his ghusl alayhi salatu wasalam. Yes.
And then is the wudu separate from the shower with two different intentions?
And that is why they differ on this issue very, very deeply. They differ because they talked, okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean that ghusl and wudu are two separate things? Or is this just a recommended issue? Or so they differed on that, because, and I'll give you an example of how that manifested later on. So if you make ghusl, if you have ghusl and you don't have wudu, so right now you got rid of the janaba, you got rid of the major impurity of religious impurity that you had. But have you got rid of the minor religious impurity that you have, which is hadath, so can you salli, right? Can you pray, or do you need to have wudu? So if let's say gas leaves your body, then you need to make wudu in order to pray. So if gas leaves your body and you have intercourse, now to get rid of the major impurity, you have to have ghusl. But will that ghusl also get rid of the smaller impurity, which was the gas leakage, or do you have to have wudu for that? So they differed on that a lot. There's a lot of difference of opinion. So I'm not going to go into the details, inshallah, because it's a very long discussion and long debate. But because of the fact that Prophet ﷺ did that, there was a difference of understanding. Imam Shafiee sees it to be that you make wudu. Wudu is sunnah. Making wudu is sunnah, and if you have ghusl, then you're good to pray. As long as you've had ghusl, then you're okay to pray even without it. So wudu qablahu is a sunnah for Imam Shafiee. It's not a fard, and it allows you to actually perform prayer. All right. So وإمرار اليد على الجسد, and using the hand, or using one of your hands to wipe, to put water all on your body, and that is a fard for the Malikiyah. The Malikiyah see that to be one of the fara'id of ghusl, which makes it a bit more difficult for those who do it in the Maliki madhab. But it's a sunnah for the Imam Shafi'i, meaning if you're making, so for Imam Malik, jumping into the pool scenario wouldn't be ghusl, because you didn't use your hand for getting water all over your body. Rather, for Imam Shafi'i, it is because the three obligatory actions for ghusl were served by the niyyah, by having no najasa, taking off the najasa, making sure there was no filth on your body, and then water touching the entirety of your body. But for Imam Malik, there's a difference of opinion. But with the sunnah of Imam Shafi'i, he added this as a recommended issue. He said then using your hand to put water on all of your body, meaning even if you're in the shower, most people do that anyway. Like under the shower, you kind of wipe and scrub and rub everything with your hands to make sure that it's you've actually cleaned it. All right. Wal muwalah. Al-muwalah also making sure that you do it not just in sequence, but actually not keep consecutively, meaning not putting large amounts of time between one thing and the other. So if you're making ghusl, so you put water on your upper part of the body, and then you go sit down, have a phone call, have some tea, and then come back and do the second part of the body. So for the Shafi'iyya, that still counts. For the Malikiyya, it doesn't. For them, muwalah is mafrood, it's a wajib. You have to do muwalah. For the Shafi'iyya, they don't see that to be the case, as long as water ends up touching the whole body, even in different sittings, then you've done ghusl and you're good to salli. Does that make sense? So Imam Shafi'i, it's a bit different. So muwala, consecutive washing without leaving large amounts of time in between, is only recommended in the Shafi'i madhab, and seen differently for the others. وَتَقْدِيمُ الْيُمْنَى عَلَى الْيُسْرَى, and then washing the right side of your body before the left side. So starting with the right and then going on to the left is sunnah. If you don't do that, that's not a problem as well. Now, when they specified, or they went into a bit more detail regarding what that meant, what they talked about is actually washing, so the right arm, the right and the right torso, and then the right thighs and legs, and then the right arm, the left torso, and the left leg. Now, when they talk thigh and leg, when they talk about the head, some of them said, okay, there's the right side of the head and there's the left side, and most of them didn't. So it's all one thing. They did talk about maybe the ears. They did talk about maybe starting with the lihya, always from the right. But this is all sunnah. So when you're doing this, it's a recommended issue. You get more ajr if you're following the tradition or the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ with it. And if you don't do it, your ghusl is just as good. Like your ghusl is fine. You're good to pray after that, and you didn't get a X on what you did. You got a check mark, and everything went well, inshallah. But if you do more, then you get a bit more ajr for actually doing that. So those are the 5 things that are the recommended actions for ghusl in the Shafi'i madhab. So tasmiyah, saying Bismillah, right, and making wudu before it. Making wudu before you do the ghusl, and then putting your imrarul yadi ala jasad, making sure you use your hands to wash and scrub all of your body, and then al-muwala, doing it consecutively without amounts of time where your body is actually going dry, like the thing that you just washed went dry before doing the one after it. And number 5 is the right side before the left side. All right. So yes.
When you say hands, could that be like one of those? I don't know what they call it. Yeah, like the.
Yeah. So So holding something with your hand to actually wash it works as well. Yeah.
Is this thing water up the nose not part of ghusl?
No, not for ghusl. Yeah, not for ghusl. Yeah.
For all of them?
No, there's different opinions for them. Yeah. Again, I'm not going to go into, this is not a fiqh muqaran. So we're not going into complete, I'm not going to write, okay, this is what this guy says, that's way too much. But yeah, the others do. So right now you're just learning on one, like I said, you're learning how to do things based on the opinion of a very large number of scholars, and they studied all the evidence, and this is what they came up with, and it's called the Madhab Shafi'i. I'm not saying it's the only right way. I'm not even saying it's the best way. It's just one way to do it. You can do it. And then there's other madhab that have different opinions, and you're free to study that as well and learn. Inshallah, we'll go through every an introductory text for every madhab bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Alright, the faslun in a chapter after that, وَالْإِغْتِسَالَاتُ الْمَسْنُونَةُ 17 غُسْلًا, and there are 17 recommended ghusl. So in 3 situations for both men and women, and then 3 situations specifically for women, so 6 situations, ghusl is wajib, it's fard, you have to do it. And then in another 17 other situations, it's masnoon, it's recommended that you have ghusl. If you don't have ghusl, you can still do what you wanted to do, but it's a sunnah for you to have ghusl. Some of these 17 will be something that has a lot of evidence to support, and then some of them will not have any evidence to support, and actually the madhab Shafi'i today does not support it. So this is an old text. There are certain things that are a bit outdated in it. There's certain things, not too many, maybe 10 to 13 spots. We'll talk about that this is not specifically what the Shafi'iyya still believe today, because the actual text is actually a bit old. So number 1, ghuslul jumu'ah, is having ghusl before Yawm al-Jum'ah. So that is a sunnah. If you do not have ghusl before Jum'ah, your Jum'ah stands. Your prayer is fine as long as you have wudu, right? But ghusl itself is a sunnah. So it's recommended that you have ghusl before Jum'ah, but if you don't, you can still pray. Wal-Eidaini, and to have ghusl before Eid. So to have the religious shower before you go out for Salat al-Eid, whether this is before Salat al-Eid, before Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Adha, that's coming up, so remember that before you go for Eid al-Adha. Make sure you have a ghusl before. Wal-Istisqa. So when istisqa is the drought prayer. So if there's a certain period of time when there's no water, then it's sunnah for us to pray istisqa as a jama'ah. We gather all outside, and there's a certain, of course it'll come up during the text study of how istisqa prayers actually happen. But it's sunnah that if you're going for salat al-istisqa, then you also have a ghusl before that one. Wal-khusufu wal-kusuf. So for an eclipse, whether for the sun or the moon. Now there is literally no evidence for that at all. That is something that many there's literally nothing. There's a number of scholars who spent quite some time trying to find where he came with this and there's really no evidence. Wallahu a'lam, what we think the reason for this to being in the text is qiyas, is analogy. Is that he just did an analogy that because there's Salat al-Khusuf and there's Salat al-Kusuf, there are prayers for it, just like there's prayers for Istisqa and Eid. So he said, okay, if there's ghusl for this, then there's ghusl for that. So it was more of an analogical fiqh hukum ruling rather than it being actually, there's actual evidence to support it. So it's up to you regarding how you want to deal with it. وَالْغُسْلُ مِنْ غُسْلِ الْمَيِّتِ, and then having a shower or having a ghusl after you've given a ghusl to someone who's deceased. And there's a hadith for the Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, narrated by Imam Tirmidhi, or done tahseen by Imam Tirmidhi, Rawah al-Khamsa. It was narrated by Khamsa, but the Tirmidhi said it was a hadith Hasan. He said, مَنْ غَسَّلَ مَيِّتًا فَلْيَغْتَسِلْ وَمَنْ حَمَلَهُ فَلْيَتَوَضَّأ. He who does ghusl for a mayyit, for a deceased person, should have ghusl, and he who carries the thing should have wudu again. Now, again, that hadith, the authenticity of it is of certain debate between scholars, and what it actually is referring to is of certain debate among scholars. So not all the madhahib agree to this concept, right?
That one is sometimes difficult to do.
Regarding,
You've got to clean someone and go bury them right away and pray janazah?
yeah, so it's sometimes hard, but it's a matter of difference of opinion. So Imam Shafiee sees it to be sunnah, not to be fard. So these are اغتسالات مسنونة. Remember, we're studying recommended ghusl. So if you've done ghusl for someone who passed away, you don't need to do ghusl. If you've touched his private parts during the process, then you may need to do wudu, obviously, but you won't need to do ghusl, right? But it's sunnah to do ghusl if that's the case.
But didn't you say that you don't have to spend long periods of time? But like, it doesn't matter if you spend like a while when you don't have to do ghusl
Sure.
or something like that. So if you wash the body, could you do it after? Oh wait, no, the prayer.
Yeah, sure.
I was going to say you could, but the issue is it's just not invalidated, right? So it's sunnah, so it's probably considered as ta'abbud, as worship, as opposed to something that actually takes your wudu away from, kind of like when you read Quran, right? Like, I mean, there's always a difference of opinion, but some scholars say that it's recommended to have wudu when you touch the Quran, so kind of like that.
Yeah, well, all right. So ghusl min ghusl al-mayyit, so to have ghusl after you've done it for a mayyit is a sunnah, it's a recommended thing to do. If you don't do it, you can still pray janazah, unless you've actually touched certain private parts of the deceased, then you need to have wudu if that's the case. وَالْكَافِرِ إِذَا أَسْلَمَ. So someone who was not a Muslim and accepted Islam now should have ghusl. Again, it's not physical impurity that he was going through, it was religious impurity. So it's a very different things, because physical impurity can be offensive if that's what you're saying. If you say, okay, you're not pure, physically they could be purer than you are, but religiously speaking, it's a different thing. So it's a religious impurity that we're talking about. So they should have ghusl. If someone was not a Muslim became Muslim, وَالْكَافِرِ إِذَا أَسْلَمَ, then you should have ghusl, and it's sunnah. Again, it's sunnah, so it's not fard. Right, so if someone who's not a Muslim becomes Muslim, for the Shafi'iyya, he has to have wudu for prayer, but he doesn't have to have ghusl. But it's sunnah for him to do ghusl. It's important to know the difference between what is being called sunnah and what is being called fard. So this is not one of them. All right. وَالْمَجْنُونِ وَالْمُغْمَى عَلَيْهِ إِذَا أَفَاقَا. And a person who has majnoon is someone who goes through, back then of course they didn't really have very clear descriptions of mental illnesses or epileptic episodes. So someone who has goes through something that was considered back then to be madness, and what it usually is either an epileptic episode or a seizure or something to that degree. Or generally speaking, if someone loses their sanity for a certain period of time and then come back to being sane again, there's different things that will cause that. وَالْمُغْمَى عَلَيْهِ, someone who is passed out or is knocked out, right? إِذَا أَفَاقَا, when they wake up, it's sunnah for them to have ghusl. Again, they don't have to have ghusl. Now the things that I'm telling you are these are situations where it's sunnah for you to have ghusl when you finish doing it. But if you don't, you can still make wudu and then pray. Yes.
Is that the same one as the person that loses their sanity, the unconscious?
Yeah, so both of them, والمجنون والمغمى عليه, the same one. Yeah, same one. So المجنون meaning someone who loses sanity for a certain period of time, as in seizures or epileptic episodes or something to that extent, or even maybe someone who just blacks out, or maybe an alcoholic who goes on a
Non-Muslim, if he doesn't do the ghusl, but he does only wudu.
Yeah, so for Shafi'iyya he's good. Yeah, for the Shafi'iyya he's good.
No matter what he was before.
Unless he was before had done one of the three things that will cause you to lose your wudu, cause you to need ghusl. So if he accepted Islam and he had just had intercourse or ejaculated or died and was resurrected again, like one of the three things that will cause you to have ghusl, then if besides that, then no, wudu is enough.
After becoming Muslim or just before?
Just before. So what was the last thing that he did? Yes.
Could you further explain it?
Mughma alayhi is basically syncope. So any form of syncope or of losing consciousness. So what exactly it means is loss of consciousness. Now, why say mughma alayhi? Because we don't want to have within that understanding sleeping. Because sleeping is also a loss of consciousness, right? But sleeping is categorized differently. But mughma alayhi is a abnormal loss of consciousness that is not obviously sleeping. So if you were knocked out during a sport, right? Or if you were extremely ill and then you just were completely knocked out for a certain period of time, or you took medication and then then it's sunnah for you if you wake up, to have a ghusl before you have wudu. But again, if you don't, then you're passing away. So passing away is dying, by passing out. If you pass away, then you have to have ghusl. May Allah inshallah give us all long lives of with good deeds. وَالْغُسْلُ عِنْدَ الْإِحْرَامِ. And to have ghusl when you do ihram. So if you're going to umrah or going to hajj, at the miqat, at the place where based on where you're coming from, there's a certain place where you need to put the ihram on. Now if you're going through a plane, there's a lot of we'll talk about that inshallah when we come to it and how that's done. But when you put the ihram on, it is or before you put the ihram on, it's sunnah for you to have ghusl before that. So it's sunnah to have ghusl before you wear the ihram, and there's evidence of the Prophet ﷺ أنه رؤيا قد تجرد لإهلاله واغتسل, that he was preparing for the ihlal, which is the ihram and starting the umrah, and that he did ghusl before he actually got it on. So they took that as that being a sunnah. وَلِدُخُولِ Mecca, and before the entrance of Mecca. So even if you're not going for umrah, or you're not going for hajj, but you want to enter Mecca, there's evidence that the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith is by the way in Bukhari and Muslim, and they say أنه كان صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يقدم مكة إلا بات بذي طوى حتى يصبح ويغتسل, that every time he came to Mecca, that he would stay a night outside of Mecca and he would get up in the morning, have ghusl, and then enter Mecca. And that's why it's seen as sunnah to have ghusl before you enter Mecca, but it's not fard obviously. وَلِلْوُقُوفِ بِعَرَفَةٍ, and before the day of Arafah, it's sunnah for you to have ghusl on that day as well. Again, there's evidence that the Prophet ﷺ did that at a certain point in his life. وَلِلْمَبِيتِ بِمُزْدَلِفَةٍ وَلِرَمْيِ الْجِمَارِ الثَّلَاثِ وَلِلطَّوَافِ. So it's saying for sleeping in Muzdalifah during Hajj, and then before throwing the stones, and then before doing the tawaf at the end of the Hajj, there's no evidence for any of those three. So there's no evidence, and the Shafiee madhab today has moved away from that, saying that there's no sunnah in those three. That those three are no longer seen in the Shafiee madhab as sunnah because there's no evidence to support it. So the only evidence we have is for Arafah. There's evidence that the Prophet ﷺ did ghusl before Arafah, that it's sunnah. But for Muzdalifah, and for throwing for the stones, and for doing the tawaf at the end of the Hajj, there's no evidence that there's a sunnah of ghusl before. Again, these are all sunnah anyway. So it's not something, if you don't do it, then you're fine. What you're doing is totally valid, yeah.
Are those three different ones or all the same?
So no, لِلْمَبِيتِ بِمُزْدَلِفَةٍ, that's one. Right, and then وَلِرَمْيِ الْجِمَارِ الثَّلَاثِ, throwing the three stones, and وَلِلطَّوَافِ, those three, there's no evidence to support them whatsoever, and وَلِلسَّعِي. So للطواف والسعي, so tawaf and sa'i, both of them, there's no evidence for ghusl before them. وَلِدُخُولِ مَدِينَةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ, and for entering the city of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, there's no evidence for that either. But that's just adab. The way the scholars see that is that's adab, and that's still a part of the Shafi'i madhab. So the ones that we talked about are no longer a part of the Shafi'i madhab. They moved away from them because there's no evidence. But for the entrance of the city of the Prophet ﷺ, it is still seen as sunnah because of the adab that is connected to it. Meaning, out of respect for his city ﷺ, you have a ghusl.
Also nothing for standing at Arafah. That's
no. Wuquf bi'Arafah, there's evidence for that one. So after Arafah, there's لِلْمَبِيتِ مُزْدَلِفَةٍ, that's one. وَلِرَمْيِ الْجِمَارِ الثَّلَاثِ, that's two. وَلِلطَّوَافِ, that's three. وَلِلسَّعِي, that's four. وَلِدُخُولِ مَدِينَةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ, that's five. So those five, there's no evidence for them, right? But the last one is still a part of the Imam Shafi'i madhab because there's adab, or there's respect to the Prophet ﷺ's city to have ghusl before. It's a sunnah. Again, these are not fard, these are all sunnah. So what we're debating is it sunnah or is it not sunnah? Right? So that's a kind of a lower level of debate. So it's something, even if it's sunnah, if you don't do it, you're still fine. What you're doing is still totally valid. Right? Faslun, now the chapter after that. I think that's pretty clear. So we counted 17 ghusl. The last 5, there's no evidence to support them whatsoever. And we also said that al-khusuf wal-kusuf, there's no evidence to support. So there's 6 of them that don't have any evidence. 5 of them the Shafi'i madhab moved away from. The only one that the Shafi'i madhab still supports is the last one, the entering of the city of the Prophet ﷺ. And they don't have evidence for it, but they use that there's the adab of entering his city ﷺ. Yes?
Are blood and excrement considered major impurities or only emissions?
So, are we talking about ghusl? Are you asking me to do ghusl? Yeah.
So for example, if you had a patient who releases on himself.
Yeah. So it's not one of the 3 reasons that you would need to have ghusl. So the 3 reasons that you need to have ghusl for is either intercourse, orgasms or ejaculation of sperm, or death. That's the only 3 reasons that you have to have ghusl. Everything else, you have wudu and you remove the najasa from your body.
For a guy.
For a guy. For a woman, then there's 3 other reasons, which is basically giving birth, nifas, the postpartum period 40 days after that, and then the menstrual period. She has to have ghusl after that.
There's no qiyas there?
Not for the Shafi'i, you know. So the Shafi'i don't see it. You don't have to have ghusl if you bleed. Right, you have to, but let's talk about nawaqid al-wudu for a second. What are nawaqid al-wudu? Go back to nawaqid al-wudu for a second. What causes your wudu to invalid? What are the things that cause wudu? Because it's important. Since you asked the question, it's worth talking about for a second. So 6 things will nawaqid wudu. What's the first one?
Alright, so anything that leads to 2 exits.
Yeah, so ma kharaja min as-sabilayn, whether so urination or feces or anything that else, any other fluids or something that will leave the 2 exits of the body. Number 2. Sleeping على غير هيئة المتمكن. So sleeping with not sitting up straight. So any form of sleeping, but if you're not sitting the way the brothers are sitting with up straight with their back supported. And then after that is the loss of sanity, whether you're sleeping or through intoxication or through illness. And number 4 is touching, and the Shafi'i is touching a woman who is not mahram to you. And number 5 is touching the front private part of the man. And number 6 is touching the back private part of both men and women. So losing blood for the Shafi'iyya is not a naqid of wudu. Right? For the Shafi'iyya, losing blood is not. But however, when you make wudu with blood on you, you have to make sure that you remove the blood. You can't pray with it on you because it's considered as najasa. So you cannot pray with having blood on your body. But having blood leave your body is not a reason for you to lose your wudu. It's not something that will cause you to lose your wudu. It's a different thing. Right, so like if there's you're running, you slipped and you fell, and your hand came into a big pile of feces, dog feces. Then what? Do you need to renew your wudu here? No, you need to wash your hand. That's all you need to do because this is not naqid al-wudu. So that's the benefit of studying a madhab. The benefit is that you understand through this madhab, okay, this is what I need to do, and then anything else does not apply. There are other madhab, other 4, you will find different opinions. We will talk about, like the opinion that he is talking about is an opinion, is a valid opinion, it exists. It's not, he didn't make it up, it's there. But I'm talking about the Shafi'iyya. The Shafi'i don't see that. They see it differently. That's why it's important that you take it step by step. You study a madhab, you understand how it works, and then you do comparisons. Also, this is where there's the flexibility. This is where this madhab sees this, and this madhab sees something different, and then you can take whatever you find appropriate, or whatever you find the evidence to be stronger, or whatever is actually more convenient sometimes for you within the circumstances that you're going through. Yes.
Is there an amount that's considered negligible for blood on the?
Yeah, we'll come to that inshallah in a second. This will all be covered. The Matn is quite it's good at covering almost everything. So we'll come to that inshallah in a minute. We'll talk about like the actual, what is the amount for the Shafi'iyya that's acceptable and what's too much. All right. Now we move on to another chapter. Now this is something I was asked last time. وَالْمَسْحُ فَصْلٌ وَالْمَسْحُ عَلى الْخُفَّيْنِ جَائِزٌ بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطٍ. And wiping over slippers or khuffaini is permissible under 3 conditions, or بِثَلَاثَةِ شَرَائِطٍ, with 3 conditions. Now, first of all, before we talk about the conditions, what is a khuf? So they said the word khuf. The Shafi'iyya and the Malikiyya and the Hanafiyya, and I'm going to go in some detail here because it's important and it affects a lot of us. They see the khuf to be a leather slipper, a leather sock, leather. So or any substance that does not let water through it. That's how the Shafi'iyya, Hanafiyya, and Malikiyya see al-khuf to be, and that's how they define it. And that's how the Hanabila define it as well. But the Hanabila have something additional to it. So that's what a khuf is. It's a fabric that is worn like a sock, right? You can walk on it, meaning it's not made out of metal. It's something that you can actually walk around with it, and it does not let water through it. So that is what a khuf is. So when they're going to give us the Imam Abu Shuja in the Matn is going to give us the 3 conditions that you will need in order for you to wipe on them when you're making wudu instead of actually taking them off and washing your feet, then he's talking about that. Right? And then there's something else, the Shafiee called al-jurmuq, which is basically talking about the socks, and they don't see permissibility of socks, the Shafi'iyya, and neither do the Hanafiyya. But the Hanabila do. The Hanabila talk about something called al-jawrabain. Al-jawrabain being socks that are something similar to what I'm wearing right now or to what you're wearing right there, as long as they have a few conditions to that. So we're going to read the conditions that they're talking about, the khuffain, which is the leather slippers or leather socks, and then I'll tell you what the Hanabila say specifically on this issue, just so that your life becomes a bit easier, inshallah, today when you leave. Or if it's already easy, you have some clarity on why it's why it is. Okay, so the 3 shara'at, the 3 conditions that you would need in order for you to be able to wipe over your khuffain. And I don't think I've ever seen anyone here wear khuffain before.
I see them
sometimes. I rarely see. I don't see many people wearing them. So they're not as common here as they are. Yeah, so as they are in the Middle East, they're much more common. And they're actually pretty nice. If you've ever wore them, they're very comfortable. Like they have inner. Yeah, in the winter they're awesome. In the summer they are not. Like in summer they're very difficult to wear. Like if you take them off, you could cause a public health hazard, with what comes out of it. So I wouldn't advise wearing them in the summer. Anyways, so the first condition, أن يبتدئ لبسهما بعد كمال الطهارة. That you wear them after you've done tahara, after you've perfected or completed your tahara. Right? So you have to finish your tahara. Now, why did he say finish tahara? Why didn't you say after your wudu? Well, because tartib is not for everyone, right? Tartib is not a hukum that is for all the madhahib. Tartib is not fard for wudu for all the madhahib. So in certain madhahib, you are allowed to do wudu in different sequence. So let's say you start with your hands, you start with your face, you do your arms, and then you go to your feet, and then you do your head. Now for the Shafi'i, that doesn't work because tartib is a fard, right? If you remember the farad wudu, tartib is a fard. For other madhab, it's not. So if you were to do that, right, using the other madhab, wash your feet before you wipe your head, but after you wash your feet, you wear, and then wash your head, didn't count. Because you wore them before your tahara was complete. You have to complete your tahara. Does that make sense? So you have to have completion of tahara before you put on the jurmuq, before you put on the khuf, before you put on your khuf. You have to have completed your tahara. And this is an example of what could happen. Now, I don't think that happens very often, but I'm just giving you the example. All right, that's number 1. So you have to wear them based on tahara. And the Prophet ﷺ, there's a hadith in Bukhari, it's a very known by Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah, where the Prophet ﷺ came to take off his khuf, and he said, دعهما فإني أدخلتهما طاهرتين. Leave them, I wore them when I had wudu. Meaning I wore them after I had wudu. And Mughira bin Shu'bah radiallahu anhu didn't know this yet, so now he learned that the Prophet, and this is one of the most, the hukum, the ruling regarding al-masah al-khuffain, regarding wiping over your slippers or leather slippers or socks, is a hukum that is mutawatir, meaning so many Sahaba narrated the fact that the Prophet ﷺ did this and commanded people and told people and gave people the permissibility to do it, that it arrived at tawatur. I mean, it is a hukum that is seen to be at a level of authenticity that is almost complete or perfect. That there's no doubt that the Prophet ﷺ had taught the Muslims to do it and done it in front of them. That's number 1. Number 2, وأن يكونا ساترين لمحل غسل الفرض من القدمين. And they need to cover, meaning the 2 leather socks or slippers that you're wearing, they need to cover the part of your foot that is fard to wash during wudu. So when you're making wudu, if you remember what is the fard of washing your feet, that you need to wash up to ankles on both sides and the heel, right? So when you're wearing a leather slipper, it has to cover up to there. So it has to be up to here. So a slipper that is just up to here is enough. It doesn't have to be up to here. Up to here is enough, as long as it's up to the ankle on both sides and it's covering the heel, right? So it has to cover the ankles and heel, and of course the front part of the foot, or else I don't understand how it would be a slipper any other way. But I'm just saying that that's what it has to cover in order for it to be permissible to wipe over it. Number 3, وأن يكون مما يمكن تتابع المشي عليهما. And they have to be of the fabric that allows you to be able to walk on them, to walk using them. Meaning if you take off your shoes, you should be able to walk with it. It's not going to, so it can't be paper. right? Or can't be anything that if you walk walking with it, you're going to rip it or destroy it, or it's unusable, it's out of metal or something. It has to be made out of fabric that allows you to be able to actually walk with them on. So let's say you're wearing shoes all day with that inside. You can only wipe over the two slippers or the two socks that you have inside if they're from a fabric that if you took off your shoes you would be able to walk in the masjid without ripping them or destroying them, or them causing you not to be able to walk. Now that's very because people talked about. I'll give you an example. Just to know where this come from. They used leaves of trees, because leaves of trees are you can put them together and you can cover the fard part of your foot, and water doesn't go through them, but you can't really walk around with them. Because if you walk around with them, it'll destroy it. Of course, if it's out of really good type of fiber or palm tree, then maybe. But if it's not possible for you to walk around with these with the socks or the fabric that you're using, then you cannot do masah on them. So those are the three conditions that the Shafi'iyya have regarding doing wiping on your leather socks. It has to be, you have to wear them with wudu, and they have to be they have to cover the fard part of your foot for wudu, meaning up to the ankles and the heel as well, and they have to be a fabric that allows you to walk around with them on without destroying them or damaging them or something else. So they have to be out of that type of fabric. All right, so those are the three conditions. Now, yes?
I know it's not mentioned specifically in this Matn, but in the footnotes in the Ultimate Conspectus, it mentions the point about it being semi-repellent to water.
Sure.
I remember in Al-Muqasid by Imam An-Nawawi, it also mentions that, and Sheikh Hamim Keller, he mentions something like 3 drops of water on the spot. If it doesn't just penetrate through, this semi-water repellent would be good enough, as opposed to completely blocking.
Exactly. So again, that's another point that is valid, because the Shafi'iyya, that's an important point for them. Meaning, it has to be something that doesn't allow water to seep through. So what you're wearing right now, what I'm wearing, water will go through them quite quickly. So for the Shafi'i, this is not a khuf. It's not seen as a khuf. So that point is.
Imam Nawawi, he's from the Shafi'i Madhab. He's one of the 2 major authorities, right?
Yeah. So he sees
a major opinion.
Yeah. So he sees if it's semi-repellent. Yeah. But again, the thing is, when we say semi-repellent, putting the criterion is mustahdath. I mean, there's no evidence for the criterion that they put. Like the 3 drops of water, like whether it goes through or not, it's all just ijtihad, right? So it's just ijtihad, and Shafi'i madhab. Well, what he said on that point is of course everything he says is extremely important in the Shafi'i madhab, but it's still it lacks authenticity of an opinion, because there's nothing to support that specific point.
Maybe just the point that there was Hassan al-Basri and Sayyid al-Musayyib saying that the sock should be thick, so maybe they made an analogy to that being...
Maybe, but I think that's where it all came from. Like the whole point of the khuf being something that does not allow water to seep through came from that basic understanding of Imam al-Hasan talking about. But that's how they kind of came up with the idea. And another reason that they came up with is the hadith that is narrated by Ibn Majah, and that exists in his collection that suggests that the Prophet ﷺ masaha ala al-khuffaini wa ala al-jawrabaini, and on his socks. And even though the hadith lacks a certain level of authenticity, Imam Ahmad took from that you can wipe on your socks as long as there are no holes in it, and that the fabric of the sock itself is thick. It's a thick fabric. So summer socks, the really thin summer socks, wouldn't qualify, but the socks like the one I'm wearing or the one that you're wearing would qualify for Imam Ahmad as far as wiping on it, and then the same conditions would apply to the jawrabayn, to the socks as the ones we talked about. The same 3 conditions. You have to wear them with wudu, they would have to cover up to the ankles, and they would have to be from fabric that does not fall to pieces when you're walking on it, or does not cause any harm. And the fact that water going through it or not going through it is the issue, is a difference of opinions between the madhahib themselves. So Imam Ahmad, as long as it's thick enough and there's no holes in it, then you can use it. Imam Shafi'i, if water is going through it, then you're not going to use it. It's not considered as a khuf. Like Brother Emmanuel added, that there are certain scholars like Imam Nawawi who talked about as long as 3 drops don't penetrate immediately, then you're good, even if it's a type of fabric that will allow water through. But there's a difference of opinion on that as well. So there's a difference of opinion, even the Imam Shafi'i madhab, there's a difference of opinion whether that's the right way to go or not. Does that make sense? So when you're wiping over your socks, then you are following the Hanbali madhab. So we'll speak for that, inshallah. Allahu Akbar.
Both on while you're in a state of tahara, like for example, I know the socks thing makes sense if you have multiple layers of socks. Let's say, for example, you put on the leather socks or like really thick cotton socks, and then you had wudu obviously beforehand, you lost wudu at some point, then you put your shoes on, you can't wipe over those shoes, but then if you took them off, so the thing is, what if you had your shoes on as well? They would count as being an extension to the foot? So when it comes to the shoes, there's a lot of difference of opinion on that one. Like when it comes to the shoes, most scholars don't agree with the shoes. Like they don't see the shoes. They're okay with the casts, and that'll come soon. When it comes to shoes, it's not seen. There are certain fuqaha in Khurasan and in parts of Asfahan, like in different parts of the east of Western Asia, where there was a lot of snow and things would get very difficult, and taking off your snow boots would almost be impossible because it's a very difficult thing. So ajazu al-masah ala ni'al, like they saw that it was permissible for you to wipe over shoes, but it would be in a situation where it's very, very difficult, and then the same conditions would apply. I mean, you'd have to put them on with wudu to begin with. But for the majority, for the Shafi'i, that's not the. I think maybe the fact that it talks about how the Prophet wiped over socks and sandals. The sandals are usually open, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got to the socks.
Yeah, so he got to the part of it that he needed to get to, because the sandals are open from in front, so it's not really. And again, this is a matter of difference. I mean, the Shafi'i don't see it. The Shafi'i say you have to take off your shoes, definitely. All right. Yes.
If it sidetracks,
sure.
Just ignore the question. But the question is, could you elaborate on the major impurities, like for example, vomit, or we know that contact with the dead is one thing they have to do a ghusl for. What about? No,
so contact with dead, you don't have to do ghusl for that either. So there are only 3 reasons for the Shafi'i madhab that make it obligatory for you to have ghusl. Only 3 reasons. And I told you, intercourse, orgasms for both men and women, and death itself, and actually passing away. Then you shouldn't be buried before you have ghusl. Those are the only 3 reasons. Yeah, those are the only 3 reasons. Everything else there'll be sunan, like there'll be recommendations. Like if you wash someone who was deceased, then it's sunnah for you to have a shower, to have ghusl after that. But everything else is not. You don't have to have a ghusl. So vomiting, bleeding, having filth on your body, it's all. You don't have to have a ghusl. You have to have wudu. But the thing is, let's say that you fell into a tub of feces. If you've seen Slumdog Millionaire, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you come out of it. So you don't have to have ghusl, but you have to take off all the najasa. Does that make sense? So you have to have ghusl. So religiously speaking, you don't have to have ghusl, but what you have to do is you have to get rid of all the najasa. Yes?
Like contact with people in places that are najis too, for example, like going in a shower room or going in people.
Yeah, so if there's najasa on you, then you need to wash it off, but you don't have to have ghusl. Okay, so understand the difference? Like I can't pray with filth on me or being in contact with something that has filth on it, right? I have to remove that before I pray, but it does not just take away my ghusl. Doesn't take away my impurity. Meaning my purity doesn't make me I don't have to have ghusl, and I don't have to have wudu either. But I have to get rid of the impurity. So like I said, if you jump into a tub of filth, then you cannot pray before you've completely cleaned yourself from everything, all the filth, and you've changed your clothing. So basically you end up doing ghusl, but it's not a fard for, that's not one of the reasons of ghusl. That's just the practical part of izalat al-najasa, of moving. You have to remove impurities if they touch your body, like feces and urine and vomit and blood and any other, and just any garbage that is on you. You have to get rid of it before you can actually do it. Does that make sense, inshallah? Yes?
What about dogs, right?
We'll come to that in a second, inshallah. So we're coming to talk about dogs and pigs and answer all the awesome questions regarding dogs and pigs. All right, so because that's an important part of life here. ويمسح المقيم يوما وليلة والمسافر ثلاثة أيام بلياليهن. And the person who is living, so you're a Londoner, you're living in London, then you can do masah on the khuf, and if you accept the Hanbali understanding, then you on your thick socks with no holes for a day and a night, meaning for 24 hours, basically. And if you're traveling, then you get to do it for 3 days and 3 nights.
right? Now, how do we calculate the nights and days? And of course, this is something that they observed the Prophet ﷺ do a number of times during his life. So, وابتداء المدة, so من حين يحدث بعد لبس الخفين, and you start doing the calculation from when you lose your wudu after wearing the khuffain. So, I made wudu for Maghrib today, and then I put on my socks, or my khuffain if you want to do strictly Shafiee, the khuffain. I prayed Maghrib, and then I didn't lose my wudu, and I prayed Isha, and then I lost my wudu, right? So from that moment, 24 hours, I can do masah on my yeah. So so I wore them before Maghrib, right? But I can do masah from after Isha, so I can do it for 24 hours from the moment after Salat al-Isha, because that's when I lost my wudu. So if I wore my socks, I made wudu and I washed my feet, and then when I wore the khuffain, right? And I prayed Fajr, Dhuhr and Asr, all with the same wudu. This is not masah yet, I haven't wiped yet, so it doesn't count. I lose my wudu after Asr, that's when you start counting. You have a day and a night, you have 24 hours from that moment, right, to wipe over your socks. Yes?
You get up for Fajr with full wudu. For that whole day, you only have to put water on top of your socks.
Yeah, I'll say it again. So we woke up for Fajr, you had complete wudu, you got your khuffain on, you prayed Fajr, right?
And I lost my wudu right after Fajr.
Right after Fajr? Okay, so now you can wipe your socks for Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and the Fajr after it. All right?
You don't have to clean your feet.
Until you've prayed Fajr the next day, the whole day. Right? So you have a complete 24 hours from the moment you lose your wudu after wearing your socks.
Is it recommended that you wash your feet fully, or it doesn't matter?
What do you mean fully?
Are you getting more ajr for
what?
For doing full wudu?
Yeah, of course. If you masah al-khuffain, so wiping over leather slippers or leather socks or socks, is a rukhsah. Rukhsah means you've been given an ease. I mean, something to make your life easier. If you choose not to do it and to take off your socks every time you make wudu, that's totally up to you, and you will get ajr. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enjoys you taking the Allah yuhibbu an tu'ta rukhasuhu kama yuhibbu an tu'ta azaimuhu. He loves you to do what is what needs to be done, and He likes you the difficult issues or the very clear ones, and He likes you to take the matters of ease, dispensations that He gives you. I don't have the proper English word for it, but whatever He gives. So masah al-khuffain is permissible in Islam, and you can do it if you're living in London, then you have 24 hours from the moment you lose your wudu after wearing your socks.
Why do you say London or living in London? So if you lived in Mecca...
No, it would be the same thing. I'm just saying that I'm just giving an example for a living. since we're talking to people here, so you're not traveling,
So basically, once either that happens, so you lose your wudu. But if you take the whole obviously you have to do...
Okay, you have to do it all over again.
So it basically breaks.
No, I'm going to give you another scenario because this is important. Let's say, like the brother said, you made full wudu for Fajr, you wore your khuffain, you prayed Fajr. And then you lost your wudu right after that. Now you have 24 hours, right? So 24 hours meaning that you can wipe over your socks for the Fajr of the next day. You're still allowed to wipe over them for the Fajr of the next day. So you wipe over them for the Fajr of the next day, right? You pray Fajr. Now you don't lose wudu. Can you pray Dhuhr still? Yes, you can still pray Dhuhr. And if you don't lose wudu for the next 30 days, you can pray without taking them off. It's up to you, right? But the thing is, after you wipe for Fajr, right? You cannot wipe again until you take them off. That makes sense? You cannot wipe again. Now if you hold on to your wudu for another 3 or 4 prayers, well, good for you. That's your choice. But if you can do that, I don't know if more men can do that, but if you can, then that's fine. But you're not allowed after you've done that. So after 24 hours are gone, you cannot wipe again. You have to take it off, and then does that make sense to you? So I'll give you an example now. Let's say that I've made wudu. I've made wudu just now for Isha, and I put on my socks. I'm going to pray Isha right now, right? So, and then I lose my wudu after Isha, I go home, I lose my wudu. Now I can keep on wiping until Isha the next day. So I can wipe for Isha the next day, right? Now, if I lose my wudu after Isha the next day, I would take them off and actually wash my feet. But let's say I did a whole nighter, an all-nighter. I didn't go to sleep. I didn't lose my wudu. Can I pray Fajr? Yes, because I didn't lose my wudu anyway, so I don't have to take off anything off, so I can still pray. I can pray the prayer after that. Yes.
But the socks have to stay on.
Yeah, of course. The moment you take them off,
If you lost that part of your wudu.
yeah, you have wudu, but you can't put them back on again. You have to make wudu again. That makes sense. So if I have wudu and I take off my socks, okay, now if I'm going to put them on, I have to make wudu again, right? So that's how it works. Yeah.
So if you take your socks off but you still have wudu, as in you took your socks off, can I still pray or do I?
Yeah. You still have your wudu, right? And you can put them back on if you have your wudu, and because you're within that day. You're within 1 day, meaning I can't say, okay, I went through my 24 hours, I still have wudu, and I'm not going to lose my wudu for another 24 hours for whatever reason. I can't take off my socks, say, well, I have wudu now, I'm going to wear them again. No, khalas, now you have to do it again. But if during the day, during the 24-hour period, if I have wudu, took off my socks, and then wore them again, I still have wudu, and I can still, but I'm still within that whole period. It's not starting a new period now. Taking them off in the middle of the period and putting them on again doesn't reverse or restart the period, so now I have another 24 hours. No, the 24 hours started from the moment you made wudu, full wudu, and then wore them, and then lost wudu. That's when it started, right? So I wipe on my socks, I pray, then I decide to take off my socks. I still have wudu. Now if I put them back on, and then I still have wudu, but this is within the period of the 24 hours, the original 24 hours. Was that too confusing? Okay.
You wash wudu and then you wipe over your
Yeah.
socks.
Yeah.
You remove your socks.
And you can put them back on again, you still have wudu, and you can still wipe on your socks, but only for the original 24-hour period that you started with. So this is not restart the 24 hours, all right?
I know you're doing this to one madhab, but there is difference of opinions.
Yeah, of course. I'm just telling you what the Shafi'i, I think, again, without going into too much.
What about urination and defecation in between in that 24-hour period?
Yeah, so when you lose your wudu, then you have to make wudu, and you have to wipe over your socks. That's the whole point of having them, yeah.
So all the madhab agree on this?
No, this is the Shafi'iyya. But the khuffain is something that all the madhab are okay with. Obviously, socks are, and I said when we're talking about socks is specific for the Hanabila, meaning Shafi'i aren't okay with socks. They're only okay with leather slippers, with leather or any other substances that don't have water can't penetrate. But I'm saying, let's say that you accept the Hanbali concept of doing it on socks, then these rules that I'm giving you also apply for all the madhab. So these rules are pretty agreed upon. Yes. Okay, these rules are agreed upon amongst the madhab. There's one more point just before we go pray. قال فإن مسح في الحضر ثم سافر أو مسح في السفر ثم أقام أتم مسح مقيم. So let's say that you wiped as living you wiped for Fajr and you made wudu, then you put your socks on and you started wiping after Dhuhr, wiping on your socks or wiping on your khuffain for Dhuhr, and you were living here and then you decided to leave. You had to go on safar. So now when you're on safar, what, you have 3 days or you still have 1 day? You have 1 day because you were here for hadar, so it's still 1 day. And then masah fi safar, let's say you were traveling, you started masah today, so you have 3 days because you're traveling, but then you arrived home 5 hours later. Then what do you have, 3 days or 1 day? 1 day. So you always go, whenever your traveling is over, or if there's any overlap with traveling and then staying in one place, then you always go with the fact that you weren't traveling. So you only do 3 days. You can only wipe 3 days in a row if you started wiping during travel and you traveled for over 3 days. Anything else you would have to do just 1 day. That is, we'll stop there inshallah, and we'll continue next week inshallah. Subhanallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khair.